This will be for the con exercise, even and odd functions equations. So just to review from last time, when you have an even function, f of negative x will return f of x. So the negative version of any x value will return the same y value. And for the odd function, f of negative x equals negative f of x. So the negative x value will return the negative y value. So if you have negative x and you raise that to an even exponent, you're going to get a positive. Okay, and just as an example, if you take negative x and you raise that to the fourth power, that's going to be the same as x to the fourth power. Okay, it's just going to be positive. But if you take negative x and raise that to an odd exponent, your answer is going to be negative. Okay, just as an example, if you take negative x and raise that to the fifth power, that's going to be the same as negative x to the fifth power. All right, so the even exponent returns a positive, the odd exponent returns a negative. All right, and you can clearly see that. If you did negative 1 times negative 1, you'd get positive 1. But if you did negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1, you'd get negative 1. All right, first problem, April was asked to determine whether f of x equals x to the third minus 1 is even, odd, or neither. Here is her work. Okay, so there's step 1, 2, and 3, and they ask if it's correct, and you either pick the incorrect step or say that she is correct. All right. So I'm actually going to do this myself and see if it matches her work. All right, so the first step in all of these, is to plug in negative x. All right, so we can find out what f of negative x equals. So f of negative x, all right, we're plugging in negative x. So wherever you see an x, that's going to be negative x. And that negative x is raised to the third power, and that's minus 1. Okay, negative x to the third power, like we said in the intro, that's the same as negative x to the third power. Okay, and that's minus 1. So that's the first step. All right, and then the only other step to do is to do the negative of f of x. So negative f of x means you multiply this whole thing by negative 1. All right, so it's going to be negative 1 or just the negative sign of x to the third minus 1. All right, and distributing negative 1 times x to the third is negative x to the third. Negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1. So this right here is f of negative x, and this right here is negative f of x. All right, you can see these are definitely not equal. So we can say f of negative x, which is this, does not equal negative f of x. Okay, so that proves that it's not odd. Okay, it's definitely not odd. And does f of negative x equal the original f of x? Well, here's f of negative x, and the original is f of x. Are these equal? No. So it's not even either. All right, so that's my work. Let's look at April's work. All right, step 1, she plugged in negative x. She did the same thing I did and got negative x to the third, and the minus 1 is still there. That's correct. All right, check to see if f of negative x is equal to f of x or negative f of x. She says negative x to the third minus 1 is the same as negative f of x. Okay, this is not correct. We said negative f of x if you negated both of these, it would be negative x to the third plus 1. But here she says negative f of x is negative x to the third minus 1. So clearly the mistake is right here in step 2. All right, so click the one that says she made the mistake in step 2. All right, is the following function even, odd, or neither? Let's take a look. All right, here's our function. Okay, remember the first step on all of these is to plug in negative x. All right, so let's evaluate f of negative x for starters. We have 1 divided by 4 minus, and x is squared. So we're plugging in negative x in place of x, so that's going to be negative x squared. Okay, and we have 1 over 4 minus. Recall that when you square the negative, it just becomes positive, so that's going to be x squared. Okay, now this is f of negative x, and this right here is f of x. Clearly they are the same. So we can say f of x equals f of negative x. Okay, I probably should have wrote that the other way around, but same thing. And we said in the notes that makes it an even function. So that's it. All right, even function. Okay, I'll do one more briefly. Ron was asked to determine whether 1 over absolute value of x is even, odd, or neither. All right, so the first step is always to plug in negative x. And if you plugged in negative x here, once you took the absolute value, it would be positive x. Okay, so it would still equal 1 over the absolute value of x. If you plugged in negative x, all right, and took the absolute value, it's still the same thing. Now, since f of negative x equals the original f of x, it should be even. Let's see what he got. All right, he plugged it in and he got the original. And he said 1 over x is the same as 1 over absolute value of x is the same as f of x. So he said, since it's equivalent, it's odd. And that's the mistake right there. If f of negative x equals f of x, it should be even, not odd. So his mistake was in step 3. So you just choose the one that says step 3.